Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us today. I'm really excited to share and introduce our guest, David Espindola. David, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, David, he's a partner with Intercepting Horizons, a strategic advisory firm. He's also on the advisory board. He's an advisory board member of the Technological Leadership Institute at the University of Minnesota. In addition to those two things, he's an author of an upcoming book, The Exponential Era. Talk to us about that, David.
Yeah, so we are really excited about the launch of the book. It's scheduled to come out in January. It's available now for pre-order on Amazon. And the book is really about all the fast changes that we are all experiencing, driven by the exponential growth and the convergence of technologies.
Fascinating subject, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. The book is really focused on business and how businesses need to rethink their strategic planning process in order to deal with these fast changes. In fact, we have developed a methodology called SPX, and the book goes through that process in detail and explains how through a process of gathering information from different signals that companies can gather from the edges of the organization, from other inputs, take those inputs and then do experiments, and through those experiments learn and reprioritize their initiatives, and then decide which initiatives to scale and which initiatives to cut back on. So that's the gist of what the book is all about.
Thank you, David. And today we're going to be taking all those strategies and methodologies that you've created and kind of think through those lenses at higher education. And a fascinating topic to me because there's so many of us being impacted, especially those that have kids at school or teach at school or anything. There's a lot of changes happening, and there has been for some time. So let's just jump in and talk about it. Higher education has been on a digital transformation journey actually for many years already. But how do you see the pandemic either accelerating a change or changing the trajectory of change at universities, David?
Yeah, so let me start by saying that this is a fascinating topic, and it's one that has really captured my attention. And so thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you here. Education is one of those areas that is primed for disruption. And I know the word disruption has been overused, but in this case, I think it really has some meaningful implications. And I think we're going to see incredible changes in the next decade. So going back to your question, the university system, as we know today, was built on a model for the first industrial revolution back in the 18th, 19th century. And it really hasn't changed that much since. So academia is an area that is very traditional. It's very resistant to change. And it's the type of environment where you really need to have a crisis in order to overcome the immune system that is resistant to innovative change. And I think that's what the pandemic has done here. The pandemic has forced universities to rethink how education is delivered. And I think it has opened the doors for new innovative thinking in education in general.
Wow. And do you think this change is going to be long-term?
Absolutely. So if you think about it, digital technologies, specifically the technologies they're using today to experience remote delivery, these technologies have been around for a long time. But before COVID, with very few exceptions, most professors were very reluctant to use this technology. In fact, I know several faculty members that have really struggled to adapt to this new model. But now that the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, I think we're starting to realize that this is a very efficient model. At least the hybrid model is the model that I think will catch on, definitely here to stay.
And when you say a hybrid model, what does that mean to you?
So a hybrid model is one in which you're going to have both the remote delivery experience as well as being in person and doing activities like lab work and perhaps having specific social type of interactions that you really need to be in person in order to take advantage of it. One thing that has happened here is we have broken the first level of resistance to innovation, right? And I think this is going to open up tremendous possibilities for additional innovative models within education. So the problem that I believe we have today is that we are on this unsustainable path of cost spiraling out of control, right? And this has resulted in one of the most significant financial concerns of the century, which is the student debt crisis.
Yes.
So I think, schools are really being forced to rethink their cost model and how this is going to work going forward. And I think the pandemic has helped from that standpoint.
So let's talk about what that campus of the future looks like in a hybrid model. I can think back at my time at the university, there's some lecture classes could easily move online in a lecture format. But I can also think of some where the classrooms are small and you're having very conversational, discussions with not only your classmates, but also the professors. So I can see in a hybrid model, there would be different things. But talk to me about what a campus might look like in that hybrid environment.
Yeah. So if I were to use a couple words to describe my vision of what the future of the university is going to look like, I would say decentralized network. So I think the current model really should be completely turned on its head. And what's decentralized today, like content delivery, should become centralized. And things that are centralized today, like curriculum development and credentialing, should be decentralized. So I'll give you an example. How many physics professors are there in the US or in the world? Thousands, right? And so I remember when I was taking physics at a state university, my college professor used to say all the time, the physics that you're learning here is the same physics that they teach at Harvard. So, it's absolutely true, right? Physics doesn't change. So why do we need thousands of physics professors? Why can't we just have a handful of the very best physics professors in the world that we can all consume from, like from a lecturing standpoint, from an information consumption standpoint? So that's an area where I see that the current decentralized model would benefit tremendously from centralization and would help us tremendously from a cost reduction standpoint.
That is a fascinating idea, because why do you need individuals all repeating the same exact thing when we have so many powerful mediums to communicate that kind of information today?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, universities provide several functions, right? It's much more than just content delivery. So I think we need to recognize that there's a social component to the university experience that allows, young people to, for the first time, experience freedom and responsibility in a somewhat safe environment. You can think of university as a very expensive babysitter. I think some people think of it that way, and it's a physical dating site. It's a place where you might find your spouse, and if not that, at least you're gonna be able to develop friendships that are going to last a lifetime. So there's much more to the whole university experience than just being a consumer of information. I also think it's a great feeding system for athletics. It's a great source of sports entertainment, and I believe that part of the university experience will continue to be strong and important in our lives in general. Many universities are research institutions, and I think research will continue to play a very important role as we continue to develop new technologies. And not all of these functions can be easily digitized and decentralized, but many of them can.
I recently read an article that in many European countries, education has been detached from that whole social element. You really just have kind of business buildings in a middle of a city, and the students just come and walk in the door and go take their classes and then disperse back into the community. And so the university has not taken on that role of providing the entire experience. But I've also heard from professors that I've been speaking to over the last few days that say a huge amount of the value that parents see in sending their kids to the university is everything you brought up there. That expensive babysitter, that opportunity to meet people, create a network, have mentorship under very smart professors. So all of that. So in a hybrid model, how might that look different?
Yeah, so I think we need to separate, these different functions that are part of this university ecosystem. To me, the functions that are primed for change and for network decentralization are, the exchange of information. And I think, the trick here is we need to rethink how we develop curriculums, and we need to really rethink the credentialing mechanism. And I think this is a huge opportunity for us to introduce new technologies and new innovative thinking. But I see a future that's much more modularized, where you should be able to take classes and have experiences that will be credentialed by different organizations, and then bring that together in one system, perhaps something on a blockchain technology, where all of your credentials are available to people that you want to give access to. And so that way, the whole idea that you have to go to one institution or two institutions and spend 4 to 5 years getting an education, I think that's going to become obsolete. I believe, education needs to become a lifelong pursuit. And if you can modularize it, you don't have to do it all at once. You can have an education experience concurrently with work experience, and you can start building, certificates, nano degrees, and even full degrees throughout an extended period of time.
Oh, that's a fascinating future. So, in a modular kind of environment, I could see things as creative as the same program meets in a different city each different year. So maybe it starts in Houston, Texas, but then it goes to Los Angeles for the second year. Third year, it's in New York City. In the fourth year, maybe somewhere else. They could get creative with all those, couldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about, the software world, right? It's where we have migrated to this open source model, and we're all benefiting from this model. And one of the things that it has done for us, it has really helped reduce the cost of software.
Yes.
So the part of education that can be digitized could use the open source model as an inspiration for the future of education. So think about, multiple individuals contributing to this ecosystem. And then in the same way that in the open source world, we have companies that are packaging open source software and providing support, we could have specialized organizations that will help put together curriculums and put together credentials in a much different way than we experience today.
Oh, wow. So let's talk about, how operating a university might be changed, the business models themselves. How might that be impacted by these kinds of future scenarios?
I think that's a really good question. We really need to think about, what is the purpose of a university? And I think if you ask, most people would say that for the most part, a university is a place where you go to get a higher education. and to get a degree. But I think this is just one component of a much broader ecosystem, and I believe that the informational aspect of education can be digitized, and that will help drive competitive price close to zero. And so universities really need to rethink their business model and change the way they think about this. If the informational aspect of education, if that cost goes down to zero, that's not going to be a great source of revenues for the universities. However, there are many other functions within the university ecosystem that can be monetized. So, athletics and sports entertainment is one of those.
Right.
The commercialization of research, right, in partnership with government, with the private sector, I think could become a great monetization category for universities. I think government subsidies will continue to play an important role, and we have universities that have very large endowments, and this dividends from those endowments will continue to be in the business model for those universities. So it's really a combination of things that will help universities rethink their business model. But the idea that the average student has to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get a degree doesn't make any sense anymore.
Interesting. It's gonna be a crazy time, because if we go back to the scenario you painted earlier, where you may have 10 kind of superstar physics teachers that everybody chooses to take their physics education from those teachers, then suddenly that changes the business model of a university. You can pick and choose any number of different professors and just put that together, and the university may have something to do with that or may not have anything to do with that particular professor. It just meets a box that can be checked off. I took the class, here's the results I got. It's moved over through a digital ledger technology, or where it's authenticated and credentialed, and so that applies to your degree. And so where does that money go to? It's almost like streaming music, that model. Instead of coming out in an album, you have individual songs you can stream. Boy, it's going to be an interesting world. So let's talk about the jobs of the future. How are universities right now effectively preparing students for the jobs of the future, or are they just kind of on autopilot?
Yeah, so great question. I think in order for us to really answer this question, first we need to pause and think about, what are these jobs of the future? What does it look like, right? So, Frank Diana, as you know, recently posted a summary of the Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum. And it's interesting, if you look at the data, it is signaling that in addition to, critical thinking and analytical skills, there are other more right brain, soft skills that need to be developed, and that will be very important in the future. Things like creativity, imagination, and emotional intelligence and empathy. Those are the sorts of skills that are going to be very important in the future. And I don't think the universities are putting much emphasis on that today. So I think that's an opportunity there for growth. I also believe that we're transitioning into this exponential era. And in the exponential era, I believe lateral thinking is going to be a lot more important. So what lateral thinking is the ability for you to pull information and pull examples from multiple domains and then connect the dots in unique ways and get new insights just by looking at how things are done in different domains. So this is a skill that I think is going to be very important in the future, and the universities need to think about, how they can go about helping students develop those skills. So, the idea that you specialize in just one domain, I think will become obsolete. I think the trend will be for you to have one area of concentration that, you're going to be going a little deeper into, but many areas of interest. And individuals that are well-rounded, that are able to, think laterally and combine inputs and insights from multiple domains, I think those are going to become the most valuable resources.
Interesting. That offers hope for those of us that are older and have a wide range of experiences, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
We can
absolutely.
bring that to the table. So, thank you for sharing kind of what your views on the future there. Let's talk about how the competitive landscape might change for higher education. You can get some superstar teachers teaching in their subjects, and they become very popular, and they make a fortune as, if you would, influencers in physics out there, right? So now they become very popular. How does does that mean there's going to be an Amazon effect where you're going to have some universities that can collect these superstar teachers and have them within their system, and that draws students globally in the hundreds of thousands or millions of students that get drawn to these giant juggernauts, if you would? Is that the role of the future? And if so, what happens to all these smaller universities?
Yeah, great question. So, I've heard somebody say that in the future, the brand is going to be the professor. So the brand is no longer associated with the university itself. I think we don't know exactly what the future models are going to look like, but I think we're starting to see trends, and I think there will be a lot of innovative thinking that's going to come out in the next several years that will define what that future is going to look like. But from a macro level, I think we're going to see continued decentralization. I think we're going to see continued networked capabilities with credentialing being done in a decentralized manner over perhaps a blockchain technology. I think we're going to see more modularization of education. I think we're going to see more personalization where me as an individual, I can build my own curriculum based on specific needs that, combine what I'm good at and what I enjoy learning with the needs of the market. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for change. The small private colleges, I think many of them will not survive in this environment. I think we're going to see additional consolidation in the education system. But if I may, can we come back to the topic of the jobs of the future for a
Yeah, let's
minute?
do it.
I think there is one important aspect of that I'd like to talk about. So I think the reality is that in the future, we won't have jobs for everybody. And that may sound like bad news, but I think there's also good news. And the good news is that I believe through technology advancements, we're going to be able to create sustainable abundance in ways that we've never seen before. And I think we need to develop new social economic systems that provide a social safety net. And I think we need to do a better job in distributing this abundance. I think inequality will continue, but at least I believe most people in the future should have their basic needs met. So the question then is, assuming that we can all have our basic needs met without the need to work, then what does that mean to humanity? What does that mean to our purpose, our dignity? How are we going to spend our time? And I think we'll see a great revival of the arts. I think we're going to see a great revival of spirituality. And, this is a huge topic, and it's a topic that I'm really interested in, and I'm planning on writing a lot more around this topic.
That's fascinating. David, thanks for bringing us back to that, because it paints a vision of abundance. And, we need that hope in the future because, it's a struggle right now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
man. All right. Well, David, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insight and your vision and these ideas toward future scenarios with all of us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. I appreciate it.